we're here to talk about innovation, and I'm going to make the case that as our world becomes more complicated and more sophisticated, our ability to innovate within it actually becomes easier, not harder. And the barriers to innovation are continually coming down. I'm going to do that by telling you about a man who changed my life with a simple innovation that today is changing the world. Before we get to that, I want to start with a simple math exercise. Don't get nervous. It's simple. If you were asked to come up with a one-digit number, any one-digit number, how many options do you have to choose from? 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. If we were to say you can invent yourself a three-digit number, or a combination of three one-digit numbers, how many combinations do you have? If somebody said 1,000, you're right. Okay, so we've added two factors, and by adding two factors, we've added 990 combinations. Okay, and just to kind of illustrate how powerful this trend gets, how many combinations of 10 digits are there? 10 billion. Okay, so as we add new factors to the mix, the number of combinations that we can derive from those factors rises exponentially. So I want to take that and think about innovation and propose to you that there are really two types of innovation. There's what I would call basic innovation, and I would include in that things like the wheel, or rope, or fire, or spoken language, or money, or written language. These are things that really come out, are true breakthroughs that will truly change the world and really come from nothing. And then talk to you about a second type of innovation, which, for the purposes of this discussion, let's call associative innovation. Associative innovation being the combination of basic innovations or of other associative innovations. And I would argue that associative innovation is orders of magnitude, many orders of magnitude bigger and more prolific than basic innovation. And that practically all innovation that takes place today in humanity is really associative innovation. And in that, I would include everything from harnessed electricity to the automobile, to email, to ride sharing, to millions, perhaps billions of innovations in between. How many combinations of a million digits are there? I think for our purposes, the only way I know how to say that number is 10 to the millionth power. I don't know what that number is called. But for our purposes, I think we can agree there are infinite combinations of a million factors. Now, if you find that intimidating, you shouldn't. Because I think for most people here, perhaps for all people sitting in this room, this makes innovation much more accessible. The barriers to associative innovation come down with each new associative innovation. Every day, there are more ways for us to innovate. Innovators today are standing on the shoulders of innovators who came before us, who stood on the shoulders of innovators who came before them. So successive generations of innovators are not exhausting the supply of innovation. How many of you have said, somebody must have thought of that already? You know, that's too bad. You know, we're really running out of ideas to come up with. It's really the opposite. The more ideas we have, the more innovations that we have, the more innovations we can create. And that number, you know, as we describe mathematically, is rising exponentially. Just to kind of give it a little bit of a practical color, think about innovations that require math, okay? Which a lot of what we do in technology or in the investment world today requires math. Having a great fluency in basic mathematics, knowing your timetables, being able to calculate percentages in your head, used to be a very big advantage in mathematics, and I think often differentiated good innovators from great innovators. About 100 years ago, the slide rule came by and really abolished that differentiation. The slide rule in itself, an associative innovation. And then we had calculators, more powerful, easier to use than the slide rule. And then there's my generation. I think a lot of people here are in that generation, some are younger, who had spreadsheets. And really all we had to do to really make massive mathematical calculations was translate the problem we were looking at into the language of mathematics, put it in a spreadsheet, and let the computer do the work. Today I'd propose that, certainly I think the younger people in the audience can corroborate and maybe even expand on this. Dictate a problem into your smartphone, and Google will give you the answer. Or certainly put you on give you leads to finding the answer that you could never have had before. If you punch 10 to the 15th power into Google, you will come up with 1 quadrillion. Okay, you don't need to scratch your head and go through a lot of sheets of paper to figure out how many sets of combinations we can derive from 15 individual factors. It's a quadrillion. Now, today's innovator will, I think, typically benefit from a different type of education than yesterday's innovator because of this. Okay, and if we kind of take it to today's education system, I think things like trigonometry or geometry are probably far less useful than they used to be. What is useful? What are the traits and skills that an innovator today will need? I'd argue anything that gives him easy access to the giant breadth of human knowledge and understanding that is expanding every day and expanding every year today exponentially. So that's the English language, because the internet's in English and pretty much everything else is in English. That's statistics, because so much of what we can glean from that vastness of human knowledge and understanding exists today in very large data sets. And I think most importantly, and maybe most universally, is a basic human curiosity, staying power, tenacity, life experience that will guide us to the problems that need solving and give us the resolve to see them to their end. So here's my quick story. The man's name is Carl Kaplan. Almost 20 years ago, Carl Kaplan leaves a career on Wall Street to start a second career in economic development. He wants to create jobs, and he wants to do that in Israel, or at least first in Israel. The first problem he comes up against is that it is very difficult, it's complicated, and it's expensive to create a job, a real job, a sustainable job that will keep itself and spawn other jobs and contribute to economic growth and the growth of society. So Carl's solution is a new model, which he develops over years. It's Kaplan's Economic Development Funds, and what that is really a combination of many other solutions and methodologies. This is truly an associative innovation. So Carl borrows from Muhammad Yunus's Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, and today much of the developing world, from best practices in modern debt finance, from Western legal methodologies and infrastructure, from innovations in crowdfunding, and from a deep understanding of the cultural particularities of the individual borrowing communities that he's addressing, and in many cases to the actual entrepreneurs that make them up. So today what Carl does, what we do together, is provide loans, highly leveraged business loans to small and micro businesses, today in Israel, but increasingly outside of Israel, employing techniques like cross-identification, intensive business consulting, tiered debt structuring, and our organization, Koret Israel, has facilitated over the years almost $350 million of loans and counting. Thanks. So Carl, who had hoped to create hundreds, maybe 1,000 jobs in Israel, has ended up creating a whole new model, which is changing not only Israel, but the world. So far, that model has spawned and sustained over 50,000 jobs in Israel and counting. And importantly, a new generation of job creators, themselves innovators, people who have been through our program and are now running independent businesses. Carl's innovation is a new kind of social leverage. Just to give you a sense of what we're doing, we lever our investments. So a dollar that we start with, a dollar that we pay in, is levered 17 times by lending institutions. That's structured finance. It's lent out and returned 9 times over because almost all of our borrowers return their capital in full. We do that 9 times. That's $150. $1 has become $150. And that $150 creates jobs which feed families, promote business growth, and really grow Israeli society. Perhaps the most powerful leverage in that system comes through the empowerment of a new community of leaders in Israel who inspire further entrepreneurship and further innovation and really energize their communities. To me, that's the most powerful piece. And we're just at the beginning. Kaplan's model is being studied in other parts of the world today. And it will be adapted and applied to address economic development challenges that today plague both the developing and developed worlds, offering a shot at independence and dignity for people who might otherwise see only frustration and despair. So have a look at this for yourself online. We're Koret Israel Economic Development Funds. It's in the bio of the conference. And I just want to leave you with this final thought. In my view, almost everybody in this room has access to the tools of modern innovation. If you see a problem, if you want to create solutions, if you have the passion, the drive, and most importantly, the staying power to see an adventure to its end, in my book, you're ready to go. And the more complex the world gets, the easier it becomes to innovate, the more combinations we have to work with. So go out there and innovate.